Rule number 7, nuclear weapons. This is the nuclear war table for the Third World War. Essentially, the decision-making is vested with the Soviet German commander and the NATO German commanders. And they'll be given a 5-second opportunity in the beginning of each turn to declare either they say nothing, or they declare they want escalation, or they declare they want restraint. If a player declares they want restraint, they can only use half as many nuclear weapons the subsequent turn, rounded down. And there's a -1 modifier to the escalation level. If the player declares they want escalation, there's a +1 to the modifier. So there are 0 to 5 levels of nuclear weapons use. Level 5 is strategic, level 0 is no nuclear weapons, and it's associated with different types of nuclear attack points for both NATO and the Warsaw Pact. To escalate from level 0, where no nuclear weapons can be used, either player rolls a dice, and if they roll a 1 or less, then nuclear war is initiated. And if the decision maker chose to escalate, then it would be a +1, so they'd have to roll a 1 or 2. So there's a 33% chance of going to the next level. And you can see it's a fairly slippery slope that escalates quite quickly. So once permission has been used, you can see that there's an increase in the number of nuclear weapons, and there's sort of different balances. When you get to level 5, the number of nuclear weapons actually diminishes, but in turn, you get 1d6 strategic strikes against cities, which can have implications. Any unit in a city hit by a strategic nuclear weapon is annihilated. The city is permanently destroyed, and it can no longer be useful as a supply source. So, the different kinds of nuclear weapons available are artillery, air, and missiles. Let's go through each of these. So, to use nuclear artillery, you must have a unit which is American, West German, Soviet, British, French, or Italian. And essentially, what you do is you can assign as many nuclear attack points as is the current escalation level for that turn. So if the escalation level is 3, let's say, then you can apply 3 nuclear attack points to a particular enemy unit. Declaring use of nuclear weapons has to be done secretly and simultaneously for each combat by those who are participating. So that's the basic use of nuclear artillery. Aircraft artillery, aircraft delivery of nuclear weapons is a little bit more complicated. First of all, the aircraft unit would have an N indicated on the piece that it can deliver nuclear weapons. So there's some incentive to reserve those nuclear-capable aircraft, particularly by the NATO player. The first mission these aircraft can conduct is a logistical strike. But this time, instead of rolling a 1d6 and dividing it by 2 to find out how many Soviet units are out of supply, this time you roll a dice, 1d6, and then you multiply it by 1.5 times the number of nuclear attack points that were assigned, which is limited by the escalation level, and so you can put a lot of units out of supply. You're basically nuking supply depots in the rear. Same logic applies to runway cratering, although you do have a lot of dispersal at airfields. A nuclear attack point applied to an airfield by a bombing mission, a cratering operation, would have 1 to 4 on a dice would result, for every attack point, would result in a crater, and 5 to 6 in the immediate destruction of an aircraft. A strike interdiction mission, here each nuclear attack point would create the equivalent of 1d6 disruptions to that particular unit. And you cannot apply more than 1 nuclear attack point per unit. So you'd have to, take you maybe 2 turns to completely destroy a division of enemy forces. The third type of nuclear weapon is the theater nuclear missile, and these are basically used in the same way as aircraft. But you can see the missiles, the Soviets have more missiles than NATO. NATO's operating off of ballistic missile submarines launching tactical nuclear weapons, and the Soviets are firing their theater nuclear weapons. So that's basically the rules for nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear capability, so all of their aircraft can drop air nuclear attack points, and the Israelis have an option to use those as well for so they're nuclear attack points, and if you read the rules, they've also got missiles. The Israelis do not have nuclear artillery.